Hello and welcome to the FREIGEIST Kongress 3.0. Hallo und herzlich willkommen zum FREIGEIST Kongress 3.0. Today we welcome a truly unique guest, Leon Bowsky, also known as Karta Singh, and he's a Vietnam veteran. He was a Vietnam veteran. And then he went into a Woodstock yogi. Leon has walked a powerful path of transformation. He's trained by Yogi Bhajan in Kundalini yoga. He's a master of pranayama and a spiritual numerologist. He's a living bridge between ancient wisdom and modern awakening. For over 55 years, he was taught, guided and inspired through yoga, sacred geometry and deep spiritual insight. Today, his sacred geometry numerology reveals people's soul frequencies and life purpose in ways that are both grounded and cosmic. It's an honor to have you here, Leon. Welcome, Welcome, Karta Singh. Maybe you can introduce yourself as well, that our people get to know you much better.
All right. Like Enrico said, my name is Leon Bowsky. At the age of 22 or so, I got the name Naima Maitreya from a spiritual teacher. And then about the age of 26, I got the name Karta Singh from Yogi Bhajan. And I was born in England and lived my whole life in America until I came back to Europe. I'm a dual citizen.
Wow. So Leon, let's go back to your early years. So you were born just after World War II and served in the US Air Force during the Vietnam conflict. How did these intense early life experiences shape your worldview and prepare you for your spiritual path later on?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and one that I am old enough now to give a good answer to. We have learned spiritually that the number 40, whether it's 40 days, 40 years, is a significant passage of time, a block of time. And once a man hits 60, which is the midpoint of life, then that man has lived 40 years since he became a man in his early 20s. So I was able to reflect back on those years and at that beginning. And what has shaped my life has been freedom. Not a chosen freedom necessarily, but one that it came out of an existential situation of a lot of us of parental abandonment and being on my own since I was 17 and not being attached to anything and following freedom. And that freedom led me, when I went into the military, to go into special forces and become a SEER instructor, a survival instructor. And that freedom allowed me to leave the military when there was a promise of a lot of material wealth and become a hippie and go on a spiritual path. And that same freedom allowed me to end up being in the ashram with Yogi Bhajan. So it's a lot about freedom. The same freedom that allowed some of us to not become enslaved by the COVID phenomenon that happened.
Yeah, wow. So it must be an amazing time. So I'm always like fired up if I meet someone who was able to attend in Woodstock or to live in this time. So how did attending Woodstock or other festival at these days with Jimi Hendrix and The Doors impact your spiritual evolution and open your heart for the new forms of living, of being? I mean, it was a massive time.
That's another brilliant question, Enrico. You remember, we all start off as children, as our parents' children in a certain culture. Then people like me, we get a certain exposure in the military or in college to a larger world. Well, when you went to a rock festival back in the 60s, you were exposed to the whole world.
Okay.
And that's what the 60s was about. It was going from provincial consciousness to cosmic consciousness. So the lessons that I learned at rock festivals changed my life. And I'll give you one example. There was a table when I walked into Woodstock, and on that table, it said, if you have food, leave it. If you need food, take it. And the people that were at the table, we talked to them and they said, well, would you like to stand here for a while and watch the table? And we said we would, my wife and I and our little daughter. And what I observed taking care of that table was that it was never empty of food. So we can take care of one another. That was one of the spiritual lessons I learned. Also, having an infant, people by nature made sure that our family was taken care of, whether it was sun cover, rain cover, food, whatever. So this totally changed how we grew up, where we only related to the people and the environment we knew. Now we realize that we're all brothers. And that's what the Aquarian age was about. And that was happening at a precise moment. And what I share with people is we could not have conceived of it. But it's something larger than us conceived of it, and we were open to it. We were receivers of what was conceived by a greater consciousness.
Wow, that sounds like very many spiritual insights. I would have expected you tell me like, oh wow, like the Jimi Hendrix, like the stories that you usually see in the television, but that it had such a spiritual deep impact of how humans interact when there is no government interference is very touching, because in our time it's all about money. It's always all about money. If you go to festivals, it's all about money, money, money. And maybe if you travel there in bigger groups, you share with each other, but there's not like a kitchen for everyone on a festival that size of Woodstock. That's for me very inspiring, and let's hope that we find a way there. Can you tell us about your first spiritual teacher, Kumi Maitreya, and how she changed your life?
I sure can. And I'm encouraged or feeling really good that I'm talking to an international audience about this, because this happened in New Orleans, Louisiana, which has a certain vibe to it or meaning to people, but it's a Renaissance city. The reality in a spiritual understanding is that it's at the foot of the largest river in North America, the Mississippi. So it's at the very delta, the bottom of all this energy that's coming down from both sides of America. And the energy in New Orleans has to transmute that energy. So it's a fertile area, musically, food-wise, spiritually, artistically. I mean, it's got its history. And a woman appeared in my life within months after I got out of the military, named Kumi Maitreya. And at that time, she was just starting her teaching, because the hippie movement was just starting. And I was one of her first students. And she gave me the name Naima Maitreya. And Naima means sun. And Maitreya, as we know, is the new Buddha, the Buddha of loving kindness, the Aquarian age of brotherhood. So her teach just totally changed my life, because I never encountered anything like that. I mean, like you or any of us, the fortune teller, which, that's what we knew about someone like her. But she was authentic, and she shared a lot of metaphysical wisdom with me, verbally, through rituals, and also directly. I think we call that Shaktipat, just being in her presence. Nice. And she externalized this religion, and it had an Atlantean overtone to it. It was very creative in New Orleans. And we chanted, and we took psychedelics, and there was a profound vibration that was going through the New Orleans French Quarter because of this woman and this movement that she externalized called Bodhisattva. I was lucky to be there. And I think that's what I was sharing with you at the beginning. It's like I had the masculine energy of dare, of thrusting, of putting myself in certain situations. So whereas someone else might have observed the situation, I went right into it. I had a spiritual brother back then too, so it was a very profound experience. So yes, it totally changed my life.
Also New Orleans. I mean, I knew New Orleans from the old LPs from my parents, or the blues records. And New Orleans in Europe is always a symbol of music and also of freedom. So it must be an amazing time. And so, how did you come then, when you were there in New Orleans, to Kundalini Yoga? And what was it like to be trained by Yogi Bhajan himself? I mean, he's a legend.
Well, that's, again, the thing about daring. When I was in the military, they say, don't volunteer. I volunteered. I dared to do things. At one point, I had gone back to Spokane, Washington, where my ex-wife and firstborn were. And my firstborn was a very intelligent, conscious being. And she told her mother that she was going to go with me. And we got in a car and we traveled from Spokane, Washington in the Northwest down to the Southwest to Phoenix, Arizona. While I was in Phoenix, I saw yogis. I wasn't really paying attention to yogis in my life. And I saw a Gurdwara. I saw an ashram. And I inquired about it, and they said, well, come visit. And I went there to visit, and I never left. And it was like coming home. It was a spiritual vibration that I didn't know that I belonged to. Yogi Bhajan was very active at that time. We were in Phoenix, he was in LA before he had moved to the headquarters to Espanola in New Mexico. So he knew he was moving to the Southwest. We had what was called the hippie ashram. There was like 100 people there. This was the early 70s. And it was profound. That's all I'm going to say. But Yogi Ji was there a lot, and he cooked and he taught and he stayed, and his wife stayed. The ashram leader was from the LA area. He was involved in motion pictures, Guru Jagat Singh. So there was a powerful time and powerful people. Yogi Bhajan came to America along with several other yogi masters, and he went right to the hippies. And that's what I share with people. If you look at Bhaktivedanta, Hare Krishna, you look at Yogi Bhajan, you look at these people, and they went to the hippies. They didn't go to the universities. They didn't go to the scientists, because the hippies were the people that would change. And what Yogi Bhajan had to do was take hippies and make them into yogis, but not over several generations, but right now. So he was very harsh to people at that time. He was loud, he was dynamic, he was very demanding. So the way that we learn yoga under those conditions, I don't think can be replicated.
Yeah. So the original Indian way or traditional way is very harsh. I have experienced this by myself when we went to India and we were trained by Indian yogis. And oh my God, it had nothing to do with YouTube yoga, because we were kind of sweating so hard and sometimes even crying, because they just were demanding it. And how was it to live as Karta Singh, the creator, and how has that identity then later on shaped your service in the world?
Well, that's a good question too, Enrico, because when I was in Washington, D.C. at the ashram there, they told me Yogi Ji wanted to give me my spiritual name. And that at that time in my life was not anything that held any value to me. It wasn't anything I was seeking. So I did it. I did not know what to expect. Excuse me.
Yeah, I can edit here. I grab a piece of paper. Like
I ended up in a very small room. In Washington, D.C., there was like probably a small storage room. And Yogi Bhajan was in that room laying down. And he just about occupied the whole room. So when he gave me my spiritual name, it wasn't just getting a name, but it was the whole experience of getting the name from him. And when he gave me my name, he said, your name is Karta, and that means creator. And so it takes a while to understand that. And I think that's what spiritual names are. Like our spiritual destiny, it's something we grow into.
Wow, and now then you've taught Kundalini yoga for over 50 years and you're a master of pranayama. And I remember the first lesson that you gave me, and in the days I was really easy for me to do a whole Ashtanga session and speaking and leading a class. But when you gave me a Kundalini session, I said, oh my God, what is this? And what core transformation have you seen breathwork unlock in your students as well?
Yeah, the breath is key. And I'm a Gemini and I have a lot of air signs. So this was something that was very easy for me to accept and to flourish in. But we change our life by our breath. All meditation's on the breath. We live by our breath. So breathing is paramount. Everything that we do affects our breathing, and our breathing affects everything that we do. So to consciously breathe puts us in a conscious place, and it starts changing our brain waves. That's one of the things that happens. It also starts detoxifying us. Within 3 minutes, we change the chemistry of our blood from an acidic state to an alkaline state through conscious breathing. The other thing that happens is we balance the polarities through conscious breathing. The masculine and the feminine polarities are coming in. The receptive and the assertive energy is coming in through the two nostrils. So there's so much that we can change in our physical body, our mental bodies, and our spiritual bodies, our psychic bodies through breathing.
Yeah, I remember the lessons that you gave here at our place, and I nearly got high, like you were training us for 2 hours, sometimes 2.5 hours. And I remember that all these breathing techniques while we were moving, I felt so refreshed after the session, like completely clear also in my head. So this is my experience with your teachings, because you brought me to Kundalini yoga, and since then I was practicing it a lot, and it was for me a game changer, to be honest.
Yeah, the secret to a lot of this is not that it's anything that we're gaining, like we know. It's removing the obstacle to what has allowed us to experience something in a pure state. Yogi Bhajan was a spiritual teacher, and he taught more than just Kundalini yoga. And one of the things he said is that ecstasy is our birthright.
Oh yeah.
So, when we achieve that pure breath, we are experiencing ecstasy.
Yeah, that's also what the Tantra teachings are saying, that we are born in ecstasy and we should actually live in ecstasy.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I think we're all on that same path where we're realizing that is our inheritance, that is our nature, and we're removing the obstacles to our authentic self.
So when I was preparing our interview, I also got to know that you were in these days able to found 2 vegetarian restaurants, one with Jerusalem Gardens, I hope that's right, in New Orleans, and the other was Spokanana in
Spokanana, yeah.
Spokanana, yeah. How did food, consciousness, and community come together in these places? So what was this?
This was an outgrowth of the Aquarian age, and this is something I really feel strongly about sharing with people. We were just people in the 60s. Someone like me, I wasn't even 21. So this was something that, like I said, was a larger consciousness that was changing things. And that's what created things that circumstances like founding vegetarian restaurants and ashrams and communities that we never conceived of previous to the 60s. There weren't young people sitting around saying, when I grow up, I'm going to have a vegetarian restaurant like a person can do now. So this was a gift of the spirit that we went through. When I was in New Orleans, I went and saw people working around a building that was being transformed. And I inquired, and the next thing you know, we were starting a vegetarian restaurant. And it was phenomenal, Enrico. The mayor of the city of New Orleans actually came to our opening, along with other dignitaries. And we had these straight people all in a circle in the restaurant, holding hands by candlelight, chanting Om.
Oh, wow.
And this was back in early 70s. So, like I said, there was a larger vibe that was bringing all of this together. And the vegetarian movement, again, there was no thoughts when I was in the military or before I went in the military about being vegetarian. I mean, I love filet mignon. I love steak. In the military, steak night, I wanted 2 steaks. So there was no thought about that. But this is a direction that we've been moving in. And you and I are together because of the vegan community, because of your intelligence and your desire to have a healthy child and live a healthy life. And something has moved us in that direction. So some of us back then were blessed enough to do things that started this movement, where we opened up restaurants, health food stores, because prior to the 60s, a health food store was maybe in America, Seventh-day Adventist who are vegetarians, small little store. Had nothing to do with the general population at all. And now that changed everything. There's so much today that's an outgrowth of what happened in the 60s. But yeah, you can't go to an upscale restaurant at a resort and there not be vegan and vegetarian options.
Yeah, that's true.
If not, the whole thing is vegan and vegetarian. So this was something that led us. And one day I stopped eating meat and went on another path for 55 years.
So that
it was brilliant, to do that. It was creative. And then the one in Spokane, again, was daring. Married who was going to be my second wife. We had just got together, walked through the Pike Place Market in Seattle, saw a restaurant for sale, made some inquiries, and with no money, I had a restaurant.
Wow. It sounds
in a very short period of time.
It sounds like an amazing time. So when we're talking now about vegetarianism and also veganism, I know that there's a big movement against this these days as well. But I would like to know your opinion on what role does conscious nourishment, both physical and spiritual, play in today's chaotic world? Because vegetarianism is around since thousands of years with Socrates and whoever. There are many famous people throughout history. And now we get a big, punishment for being vegan because it seems to be unhealthy. What is your opinion on that?
Why do I think it's grown like it has?
No, why? What role does conscious nourishment play in a chaotic world like today? Like
Oh, in my life?
that we don't.
Yeah, conscious nourishment. That gets back to elemental truths about what a living being is. Yogi Bhajan said the God is an acronym for generating, organizing, and destroying. We ingest, digest, and eliminate. The whole universe is conscious and it's information. So information is coming to us through the air, through the sunlight, through the water, and through Mother Earth, through the food that we eat. So if we eat pure food that's living, then that's part of our consciousness. If we eat dead food that is adulterated, then that becomes part of our consciousness. You know, we can do so much to change what is coming into us through the organization, but that doesn't change what we bring into us. Okay.
Yeah, for me, it's also like the idea that to eat meat or whatever comes from animals is very strange. Even if I grow up as a meat eater, I also feel that there is a soul in the animal, and I don't want to be attached to all these souls that might have a life in captivity. My game changer in my life was when I consciously decided in 2004 to become vegetarian, and then I had nightmares for weeks when all the animal spirits left me again, and it was a nice cleaning. And suddenly I was self-employed, and suddenly I was free, and so I left the cage without even planning to leave the cage, and just by changing my diet, and suddenly I could decide for myself. I was never working for a boss in my whole life, and I think it has something to do with my vegetarian, later on vegan diet. And also my spiritual path was very influenced by living in brotherhood, sisterhood with the animal kingdom, that I was not allowed to touch it because we don't touch humans, we don't eat humans, so why should we eat other living beings with the same heartbeat, with a lung or with a spine? Yeah. So on your journey, you developed your own sacred geometry numerology system. What is the essence of this method, and how does it differ from the traditional numerology?
What I'm doing, Enrico, nobody else is doing. And, you know, I'm certain of that. And it's something that comes out of what we were talking about earlier. You know, my name is Karta. I'm a creator. Yoga center, restaurants, my own catering business at an eco-tourist travel agency for 20 years, an essential oil business that led me to my last child. And this numerology business has evolved. And the reason it's different is because the polarities are the masculine and the feminine. The masculine is the thrust, the straight line, the injection. And the feminine is the circular, the round. And numerology is a study of information of numbers, but I had never seen it put in the feminine. And coming out of the 60s, it was inescapable from my consciousness because we know mandalas. We know the natal horoscope. Is circular. That's a center. It's called sacred geometry now. It's a center with a circumference. So my higher consciousness wanted to bring numerology and sacred geometry into oneness. And when I did, all of a sudden, and I still have, is a map, just like a horoscope. I have a map now of numerology where it tells story after story after story, depending on how deeply I can interpret. What made it work was understanding that the circumference of the circle was 120 years. And even this weekend, when I was in Portimao here, I run into a woman I've never met before, and she echoes the same thing. I want to live to be 120. I've always said that. I've seen books. I want to live to be 120. In spiritual and religious traditions, they say, may you live to be 120. Once I knew the circumference from birth to death for a biological human being was 120, and you put the 4 directions in it, then you have 30, 60, and 90 years of age. Those are approximate Saturn returns, and it separates the 4 quarters of a human existence.
Oh, wow.
Youth, adult, senior, and elder.
That would mean,
just like it does in yoga.
that would mean that most of the people never experience their last quarter and think that when they turn 60, 70, that's already the end instead of just the start of the second half.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. And that's cultural conditioning. And Deepak Chopra, when he was making an impact on the spiritual community, that was his teaching.
Wow.
He did that many ways. He said, if you take an aquarium, you put a glass in it, you separate the fish, you take the glass out, they stay separated. You take a horse, you tie it to the post, and then you just throw the rope down and the horse stays.
Oh, yeah, that's the part.
So we're in a culture that says you retire at 60, 65, and you die at 75, 80, then that's what people do.
Oh, yeah,
But
imagine.
no, our human lifespan, our biological lifespan is 120 years. A woman goes through menopause if she's healthy, between 55 and 65. The male, whether he knows it or not, is going to be on the decline of his sexual virility at that age. So 60 is the high point, the midpoint. And you have another whole 60-year journey to complete.
Wow.
And there's a lot of reasons, like I say, individually, culturally, why people don't want to do that. And that's why you're talking to me, Enrico, because I'm someone that's nearly 80 and I'm not done.
Yeah, I remember.
But if you don't take care of yourself and become conscious, then a lot of people, 80% of people, by the time they're my age, they're done.
That's true. Yeah, that's really true.
And we are human beings. I don't know how much of this I can share, but the word human being, Hu is a word for God. People chant Hu. It's like chanting Har, Hu. Man comes from manos, mind. So it's the mind of God, human, being in existence. The larger consciousness that we're all part of, the oneness, is existing through our individual consciousness. So we're human beings. When we stop being, no need, we're gone. So yes, there is a wonderful quality of life between 60 and 120. And taking care of yourself between 0 and 60, health, mental health, emotional health, these help in that last half. So the system that I have looks at the 4 quarters. When we come into this life spiritually, whatever language we want to use to explain this, we have made a promise to ourselves to go on this journey of life. So we can look at that first number, the month that we come in. What is that promise? What does that energy tell us, that journey that we're on? The second quarter of life, that number tells us what energy we have to fulfill that promise to our consciousness, to our higher selves. The third number, the year, that third quarter, that is when we have our wisdom and reflective time to make adjustment, so that when we go back to the oneness, we're free. So it's a journey that we take, and each one of those numbers explains the location and energy that we are involved in to fulfill that promise to ourselves. And the birth path number, which is the sum of month, day, and year, That's how we want to experience this transition. And it's different for different people. Some people want to be self-realized. That would be number one. Some people want to have a healthy relationship in what we know now as the Aquarian age with life, all life, with a partner, with nature, with God, with society. That's a 2. A 3 person wants to say, I've enjoyed like a child. This is just, I'm fully present. I'm enjoying it. It was great. A 4 person, like the box, they want to know I am stable. I am secure. I feel that I have achieved what I want to achieve in this life. More practical. 5 persons, a player. So that's what that birth path number is. So all of those blocks, it's like when our children, they play with blocks. And when those blocks then become a finished building or shape, car, whatever. So those blocks of the numerology will lead up to our life path number. So it's really informative. I mean, if you, again, Enrico, you take the information in 1 teaspoon of soil or the information in 1 cell. That's how much information we're dealing with, and we're realizing through the artificial world, the cyber world, which approximates consciousness, intelligence in the universe. So there's a lot of information in our numerology. Why we were born, when we were born, and what energy we have to bring to life that's going to affect ourselves and other people.
So let's say I discover that my number is a 5 or a 6. How can I apply it? I mean, for me, it makes sense that I met many people, and what you said, some like it very stable. They are planning ahead, like for years. I can't even do this because I need kind of different planning, different motivation. So it would explain me why people are so different in their how they perceive life and how they walk through their life. So what can people do after they have realized, okay, that's my energy trait or that's my number, and how can they make use of it in their day-to-day life?
And that's I love that we're talking in this context. That goes back to what we were talking about spiritually. We remove the obstacles to knowing who we are. So a person inherently knows who they are. When I do the reading, it's like shining a mirror, holding a mirror in front of someone, or letting them watch a movie, or telling their story through me. So it allows a person to know who they are. One woman said, it gives me permission to be me. So it's like realizing that God, whatever we want to conceive of, the great spirit source, has given each one of us permission to be authentically who we are. So if we come out of 10,000 years of patriarchy, there's so many women I talk to, and they cry because they didn't know. They knew who they were, but they couldn't be who they were. And now you show them, yes, that is who you were. You were right. And now this is the rest of your journey. Because once a woman goes through menopause, she's no longer the wife and the mother in that context. Now she's much more in an individual journey. She's not feeding in the same way. She's not having to raise children. She's all of that, provide a home. So she goes on her individual journey. So it's very informative for women coming out of the patriarchy. It's very informative for young people, because a lot of people right now, between this first quarter of life and the second quarter of life, that first Saturn return, we've come into a situation where there's a lot of information, but not a lot of truth. There's so much information that the guidance that needs to be there from leaders in the family, in the community, are not there unless people seek them. Because there's a lot of disturbance, a lot of chaos, like you were saying earlier. And so this way a person can know that they're on their own journey and that their expression is legitimate. Like you or someone that has 5 energy, freedom is paramount. Freedom is paramount. Movement is paramount. You can't be held into one place, defined, and curiosity and sharing that information. That's all the 5 energy. It's taken that 4 energy, which is reducing things and opening back up. And that's what I've seen in the progression of numerology, where everything is reduced through 1 through 9. You get back to the essential polarity. And so it's assertion, like 1, and then 2, surrender. And then 3 is like assertion again, positive, I'm going to create. 4 is I'm going to take what I've created and stabilize it. And then 5 is like that 5 energy is going out and exploring the world. 6 is let's bring it back into balance.
Yeah, that would mean that we would not have to fight against our own identity. And
Right.
I met so many people that try to fit in so eagerly, and then they lose contact to their self, or they try to fit in their kids into a school system where they have to sit like this. They are not allowed to eat, not allowed to pee. They have to listen to a teacher much bigger than they are. And so if you share this with the people that, like, look, this is your way of expressing yourself, it can be so liberating for many people who try to fit in the last decades, because it's a long way we've went down with our civilization and also with the Western democracy. And you also lived through profound cultural shifts, from war to peace, from rebellion to revelation. What is your deepest spiritual lesson that has stayed with you across the decades?
Yeah, that's the beauty of it when it comes down to this, because this is what we're all learning. There's a reality to it. The universe is perfect. It's in perfect balance. So the universe could not have existed without each one of us being born. That's what we have to understand. We're not a number. We're not forgettable. We're not irrelevant, but we are as relevant as any star in the sky. The universe would not be perfect without each and every one of us. So it comes down to authenticity, to be ourselves, to occupy ourselves. So that's the spiritual lesson that I think we're all learning, that we are one, but we're also individually one. And the one, the macro one, wants to experience itself through the micro one. And it cannot experience itself uniquely through the micro one, each one of us, if we're not authentic and true to ourselves. So that's what we're learning. And that authenticity of walking our own way actually unites us. Rather than separates us.
That's beautiful. That means
so that's a journey individually and collectively that we're all on, and it's moving into this. We have to give it a name, but the truth. I know the truth as we have moved from provincial consciousness, whatever caused that provincial consciousness, and you and I have some theories about that and some understandings about that, to cosmic consciousness. And that means the whole universe, the whole enchilada, the oneness of everything. So this is a profound time in history.
oh yeah. So if we would take off our mask, then we would be able to live an authentic life, and that would liberate us and many other people around us. Did I get this right?
Yes, that is what happened. And I mean, it was visual, it was physical. We literally ended up naked. I mean, I sat around naked. We went to rock festivals naked. You know, we had parties naked. We lived naked. And when you do psychedelics, that helps on that path of exposure and finding your true self, your true nature, and being naked to the things that aren't you. And this has only been, like you said, 55 years. You know, give it a little while and let's see where this goes. You know, this is a profound change on Earth and in the human family. What we see around us now is what our thoughts in over 10,000 years have created. This is all gone. And what our thoughts are going to create in the future is unbelievable, beautiful.
Did you say this? I remember back in the days, when we were in Hawaii on Black Sand Beach, it was a nudist beach, a hippie yogi nudist beach. And in the beginning, it was a little bit overwhelming because we are conditioned like to close ourselves, to wear the mask. But
Right.
after a while, because it was a very nice energy, they had a drum circle like every day going on. People, indigenous people were going around passing fruits to each other and exchanging fruits. It was really like paradise. I mean, in Hawaii, people were diving in the ocean and they were absolutely happy because they could hear the singing whales. And they were dancing on the beach and doing yoga, but all nude. And the interesting thing that I discovered for myself is that we as Europeans, we are conditioned to sexualize nudity.
Right.
And therefore comes a lot of conflict into our own personality, into our lives as a society and whatsoever. And there it was different. After you were able to acclimatize, I'm not sure if this is the English word, that after a while you get used to the vibration.
Right.
Your eyes could see the true essence of the tribe coming there together. And nudity was just part of it, but it was not in the center, not in the focus. It was just an expression of a life feeling like here we come together as a family and we don't have to feel ashamed if we are fat or thin or no muscles, whatever. We have so many cliches how a perfect body has to look like. And my wife always reminds me, like, you remember this old lady in her 90s when she started to do her yoga like a young goddess? And then she went to the ocean and swim out. She really swim out like a baseball field long onto the open ocean. And then a friend just said, I know her. Her name is Angel. And it was such a revelation for us to see how life can be and also how elder people can express freedom and gratitude to life, because in our current society, elder people are told, like, wear dresses, don't walk around like this, hide yourself. Kids were told very early, hide yourself, wear dresses, for a reason. But I think we should, this is my opinion, we should heal this, that we are able to come together in a harmonious, peaceful way and share unity. And if you sit on the beach, I mean, no one wants to get the strings on the body from the sun.
Right.
You know, everyone wants to get this perfect 10 without boobs covered with white, or the ass is in white after you go to the beach. Yeah, interesting that you say this is also so important.
Well, that's what happened. Like I said, we could not have conceived this prior to what happened in the late 60s.
Mm-hmm.
No, there was no, if anybody would have been naked in my home in the 50s, it would have been because something bad was happening.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if my mom would have come out, this is a true thing that I experienced. My mom, when she came out naked, it was because she was angry and ready to do my stepfather, her current husband, and give him a hard time. But nudity was not normal.
Yeah. I mean,
It
it's
was an aberration.
they,
And it happened in the 60s. And I don't know if it would not have happened without psychedelics. That's the thing that people don't understand about psychedelics that I think needs to be understood. Yes, the spiritual energy, the larger being was changing consciousness, but we could not have changed without psychedelics.
yeah, there's a
It's
very,
like, you can say, yeah, you're in Portugal and you want to go to Germany. That's great, but you can't go there without a vehicle. And psychedelics was a vehicle. We didn't know that. There's no way we could have known that. But look at the change in the music of the Beatles, Bob Dylan, when they started doing psychedelic.
yeah.
And then that's what happened to us.
There's a nice series on Gaia, and it also discovers the psychedelics and other things. And they figured out that the religious leaders and governments, first thing that they did when they occupied other countries, take away the natural remedies that help people to connect back with nature, to get control over their spiritual life. Because as
That's
soon
right.
as they were able to get control over their spiritual life, they were able to break their soul, and it was much easier to dominate them. For example, with Christianity or with Islam, like to convert people, you have to take away their sacred medicine, and then it's much easier to control and dominate them. And
Yeah, and we were the people, the children of the 60s, that took it back.
yeah,
And I share that with people. Up until there was legalization in some of the states of the United States, I had to live as a criminal
yeah,
my whole life, even though I worked a job and I obeyed laws and I was a peaceful person and I raised 4 children. The fact that I did psychedelics, I was a criminal. I was hunted.
and nowadays we
It's a
see
hell of a way to live.
that there is so much cure actually in it if it's used in the right amount. So slowly we will come to an end because, wow, for those of us or who are listening who feeling lost or fragmented in the today's world, what is your most direct loving piece of guidance that you can share with our audience?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Also, I think we're getting back to realizing, like I said, our authentic self. And authentically, we are peace and love. That's a natural condition. It's a natural condition of why we form families and why we have children and why we feel the way we feel towards our children and why we describe the spiritual family in the same way as a father, a mother, and children, and that dynamic that happens in a family. The alternative is not good. The alternative is very cold and artificial. So the lesson I think that we're all learning is that we're okay. Be ourselves, be authentic, occupy ourselves, and be fully present and enjoy this life. It's a remarkable situation to be in. We didn't create ourselves. We create what we've been given, and that colors our life. But there's no way we could have put these molecules together or the intelligence that goes into one molecule. So there's a greater being that, has that intelligence. But it is our responsibility to take that energy and create something authentic so that the greater being is experiencing itself in a fresh, authentic way. And that's what I share with people. It's not discovering or making something up. The Tao Te Ching, which is a distillation of Eastern wisdom, Tao Te Ching means the way. Jesus, who is the pinnacle of Western religion, taught the way. The way is your life, no other life. that's the way. So the more authentic you can live that life and in connection with the greater spirit, you're going to feel good and your life is going to be blessed.
That's beautiful.
And it starts bringing things back into coherence, where you and I are brothers. Because with authenticity, you don't have the authority to take someone else's life, another being's life, because there's a greater author. You're only the author of your own life. And each living being with a soul is the author of its life. So once you take another living being's life, then the whole world changes. And like you said, when you stop doing that, and you got all those souls out of your body, then your life changed.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much, Leon. And
You're welcome.
it was a pleasure to find some time to have this little conversation here. And for everyone who would like to contact you, we will link under this interview your email and also your website, that they are able to reach out to you. And I can say that these readings, they really have an impact on a personal journey. I saw many people here who got the reading who were walking around in our community completely blissed out, sometimes for days, when they finally realized, okay, everything is so easy but so beautiful at the same time. After they received the reading, they realized, like, I'm okay, and okay, I knew it, but thanks for the reminder. So feel free to reach out to Leon, Karta thing, and thanks for having you here, and see you hopefully soon. Namaste.
Namaste.